to Sudan, ICC Chief Prosecutor urges Sudanese government to surrender suspects of gross human rights violations for prosecution and investigation. And over 34,000 people got vaccinated in AstraZeneca vaccine in the Gambia, despite controversies surrounding the use of the vaccine in some countries. Elsewhere, in a major cabinet reshuffle, Ugandan president appoints more women in cabinet. These and more coming on the news desk. Hello and welcome to the news text with me, Julden Yaiswara. Many thanks indeed for the pleasure of your company. And now to the news in detail. In what is called her final visit to Sudan, Fatou Bensouda, Chief Prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, urged the Sudanese government to cooperate with the court to surrender suspects of gross human rights violations over the years for investigations and prosecution. In her last briefing to the Security Council, the ICC Chief Prosecutor Fatou Bensouda said the developments in Sudan demonstrate that the arm of justice is long and patient. Mariama Cham takes us through.
Briefing the Council via teleconference on the situation in Darfur, ICC's Chief Prosecutor Fatou Bensouda says many stood in the way of her office on the dossier while many others supported the ICC's path to justice. According to Bensouda, the ICC and the government of Sudan have turned a new page in their relationship, adding that the old days of hostilities and non-cooperation have been replaced by constructive dialogue and a good spirit of cooperation.
Sudan is under a legal obligation to surrender the suspects pursuant to Resolution 1593. The Juba Peace Agreement is also clear that all suspects must appear before the ICC and that Sudan should fully cooperate with ICC in its investigations and prosecution of these suspects. Sudan has to tangibly demonstrate that the new Sudan is now a fully fledged member of the international community that has joined the fight against impunity and is fully committed to justice and the rule of law. Almost all the suspects are in the custody of the government of Sudan, and there is no legal impediment to their surrender to ICC.
ICC prosecutor emphasized that the transition in Sudan still needs nurturing to mature as peace and justice continue to elude the people of Darfur. She says the withdrawal of the UN-African Union hybrid operation in Darfur seems to have created a vacuum that still needs to be filled. Bensouda adds that the security situation remains volatile in some areas in Darfur, including reports of sexual and gender-based violence.
Justice and accountability in Sudan, including Darfur, cannot be achieved without maintaining security and stability for vulnerable communities. The violence against IDPs, and in particular, women, girls, and children, must stop. I call on the members of the Council and other regional partners to continue to do everything within their power to help Sudan break this troubling cycle of violence.
Bensouda stresses that people in Darfur continue to yearn for peace, security, and other basic necessities for their children and the return to their homes. She says the issues will not only require the restoration of trust between government authorities and the people of Darfur, but also resolution of the causes of the root issues that have bedeviled the region over the years, as well as the support of the international community. Bensouda underscored the need to execute the 4 outstanding ICC warrants, adding that suspects must be handed over to the ICC. For iAfrica News, I am Mariama Cham.
Now, Gambia's Fatou Bensouda, they are calling on the Sudanese government to cooperate with the court in the investigation and prosecution of suspects of gross human rights violations. Now, as health officials in the Gambia continue to encourage more people to get vaccinated amid increasing COVID-19 cases, over 34,000 took their first jab of the vaccine. At the initial stage of the vaccine trial, many people in the country doubt the efficiency and effectiveness of the vaccine, leading to the suspension of the vaccine in some European countries. The ICC tells us more of that in this report.
In March 2021,
Several European countries paused the use of the AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine after several reports of blood clots. Despite the suspension of the vaccine by these European countries, the vaccine continues to take its toll in the Gambia as over 32,372 have been vaccinated so far. These include the frontline workers, security personnel and government top officials, including the president, as well as those with complicated illnesses. During the process of the vaccination, misinformation has made the process very difficult for health officials, as explained by Mbanjai from the expanding program immunization.
People we are misinformed. There are a lot of misinformation among people because population with the social media sending WhatsApp messages telling them the vaccine is not good and all those things. They are here to kill people and the like. Those were some of the messages that people have been talking about.
In order to make availability of safe and effective vaccines on a large scale in the Gambia, the World Bank Board on April 16, 2021, approved $8 million financing from the International Development Association. People continue to receive their jab of the vaccine. Those who took the first jab are encouraged to receive the second jab. According to the latest situational report by the Ministry of Health, the Gambia has recorded over 60,000 confirmed cases, 5,800 recoveries, and 179 deaths. Reporting for iAfrica News, I am DCC.
More than 34,000 Gambians got vaccinated with the AstraZeneca vaccine. Now with that, we go straight to Nigeria because in their effort to help ease severe shortage of oxygen, the Nigerian government planned to build more oxygen plants in all states of the country at a tune of 6.5 billion naira. In December, the government enlisted Nigeria's Air Force to increase liquid oxygen production at a plant in the northeastern city of Yola and fly 117 cylinders to 2 COVID-19 centers in Abuja. Detail in this report.
Stephanie Adams is a full-time homemaker who nearly died 10 years ago due to the lack of oxygen at the health center in Jos, not central Nigeria. Eventually, she found one with oxygen. Stephanie considers herself lucky and says she knows many who died because they couldn't access oxygen.
When I was sick and I needed oxygen, I went to so many hospitals looking for oxygen. There was no oxygen. I was lucky to have one, and I was lucky I scaled through it. Other hospitals don't have it. So many hospitals don't have it, and people are dying. People are dying. Most especially in this our area of this corona, COVID-19.
While Stephanie found help, others haven't been so lucky. Nigeria's health ministry says an estimated 625,000 lives are lost yearly to diseases associated with insufficient oxygen in the blood. The nation's Center for Disease Control says things have gotten worse since the outbreak of coronavirus in the country. It says over 2,000 people have died from the disease alone, most of them due to lack of oxygen at health centers.
Oxygen administration has been a very serious challenge in the healthcare services delivery. Most of the time we find it very difficult because the availability is not adequate enough. And it is essential that any hospital facility should have enough oxygen for patients that deserve oxygen administration.
The government has now approved a sum of 6.5 billion naira, around $17 million, for the construction of at least one oxygen plant in each state of the country. Health professionals say it's a necessary move.
Taking this giant stride is very important. Nigerian citizens will really welcome it, especially the health personnel, because we have seen the great need of having this oxygen in abundance for our patients that require its administration.
But the health workers have a demand from the government. The health professionals want the government to engage the right hands to execute the project. They are calling for reputable medical personnel without a history of corruption to be part of it. They say their expertise will be necessary to prevent mistakes in implementation. The government says it is determined to fight corruption in all sectors. If the oxygen plants are built correctly, health workers believe they will make a big difference. And people like Stephanie won't have to search for oxygen until their last breath.
From that report in Nigeria, we head straight to Tunisia, where the government is planning to cut its public sector wages bill and replace subsidies with direct support for the needy. The International Monetary Fund has previously called on Tunisia to enact economic reforms to reduce chronic physical deficit and a large public sector debt, including by cutting its wage bill, subsidies and transfers to state-owned companies. More of that in this report.
Tunisian authorities have said that redirecting the subsidies is a necessary operation amid an ongoing economic crisis that has been exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic. Tunisia subsidizes vegetable oil, bread and many other food products as well as energy. The move to redirect the subsidy is part of the structural economic reform program, which has been developed by the Prime Minister's economic advisors.
The government will redirect the subsidy to those who need it the most. All poor, average income, even above average income families will get the subsidy. Anyone who needs and deserves state support will get it. Redirecting subsidy will better serve the population.
Economists say the reforms to cut subsidies would involve first phasing out food subsidies and then gradually ending subsidies for electricity, water and petrol. Tunisia is currently seeking a $4 billion loan program from the International Monetary Fund. Cutting subsidies is part of the recommendations of the IMF.
The state aims to enact economic reforms to reduce chronic fiscal deficits. These measures are urgent. There are other midterm reform plans which take into consideration the IMF's program. Tunisia cannot revive its ailing economy and seek foreign loans without showing the concrete results of its reform plan.
Tunisian authorities say the economic situation facing the country over the last decade has been difficult and has worsened by the COVID-19 downturn. Therefore, the next reforms will be very painful. One of the main axes of these reforms is restructuring state enterprises, their operation mode and their ability to generate profits.
It's time for real economic redress. The government needs to explain the reforms to the population. We can no longer talk about salary hikes and state spending without production and productivity. Tunisia's financial resources have doubled over the last decade, but the public sector wage bill and expenses are still too high.
Prime Minister Hisham Meshishi promised that his government will not initiate reforms without the agreement of various parties, including national organizations such as the General Labour Union and the Tunisian Confederation of Industry, Trade and Handicrafts.
Many Tunisians believe that the subsidy system, which was put in place in the 1970s, has always improved the purchasing power of millions of people. However, economists warn that this costly system is no longer efficient after 1 decade of economic difficulties and social unrest.
We will now take our first break. Still to come, it's more local and international news. So stay tuned.
The pride we take in our brand, the work we put into constantly change the landscape and elevate real estate in the Gambia, it's compared to none. From inception, our goal was to add value to the beautiful Gambian landscape. That's why we are proud innovators of community estates. Kololi Sands is an exceptional piece of work, tailored for ultimate convenience and luxury, to bring you an element of finesse that is rare but unique in its own. This is also our pride and joy, and we welcome you to the exquisite beauty right here in Kololi and right here on the waterfront. Kololi Sands, feel the ocean breeze at your doorstep.
Welcome back. If you're just tuning in, this is the news text on iAfrica TV, and I am Julde Njaisware. Now to the rest of our stories. The newly designated Nigerian High Commissioner to the Gambia has on Monday presented his credentials to President Adama Barrow at the State House in Banjul. Mr. Manu Mohammed said he is looking forward to strengthening a good working relationship with Gambian authorities. Binta Jallow has the rest of that story.
Nigeria and the Gambia enjoy cordial relations as members of economic community of West African states and on the Anglophone lines. The two states stand for one another in different socio-political and economic developments, although the relationship is considered as asymmetrical. Nigeria is in position to play a much important role given her advantage in size, natural resources, and advancement. Speaking to reporters after submission of his meeting with the president, Mr. Manu Mohammed described the relationship between the two countries as very smooth and cordial.
It has been a very, very good relationship, and it's demonstrated in terms of technical, relationship in the area of judiciary, health, military, and other areas, and also level of high, visit between the two countries, interaction between the two countries. It's a demonstration of the very, very cordial relationship between the two countries. So I'm sincerely happy to be here, and my hope is to build, based on this existing relationship, to see what I can add to make the two countries more and more closer.
The new designated Nigerian High Commissioner to the Gambia outlined areas of priorities to accomplish during his tenure in office.
What my areas of priorities really is to see how, we bring our peoples together, more closer. Investment, I want to see a situation whereby Nigerian investors invest more in the Gambia, and likewise, the Gambian investors also invest more in Nigeria. And I would also want to see, if there are areas of which needs kind of agreement, MOUs and other things, which will bring the two countries more and more closer. I will try to pursue them, and if there are new ones are needed, I will also try to ignite some.
The Gambia economic progress depends on sustainable bilateral and multilateral assistance, sound economic management, and technical aid from partners. Following the disputed December 2016 presidential election in the country, both the African Union and the United Nations Security Council, backed ECOWAS, gave legitimacy to the voice of Gambians. Nigeria made a cordial pledge to the regional intervention with heavy naval presence in the economic mission. While the intervention was a victory for pro-democratic activists, the Gambian situation served as a model to other parts of Africa. For iAfrica News, Binta Jallow.
New Nigeria's High Commissioner to the Gambia presented his credentials to President Adama Barrow. Now, Ugandan president has released a long-awaited list of new cabinet ministers and ministers of state late Tuesday. Museveni surprised Ugandans by appointing women to major key positions of vice president and prime minister, respectively. The Ugandan head of state is of the belief that having more women in government will help improve service delivery. We have more of that in this report.
A television journalist turned politician, Agnes Nandutu is the new minister for Karamoja Affairs, and she's gearing up for the task ahead.
We are in charge as women, and in the next 5 years, the president has entrusted us. We are going to drive this country to the middle income status.
Agnes joins several other women who have been appointed in key ministerial positions, including the vice president, the prime minister, and all the deputy prime ministers. The new ministers will now face Parliament's Appointments Committee for vetting, and those who will make it through this process will take on the task of providing better services to the locals. President Yoweri Museveni says he wants to fight endemic corruption in the country.
To achieve these aims, we must defeat corruption and disorientation and we shall defeat them. Corruption has become a real enemy.
But anti-corruption campaigners argue that the president should do more than appointing women in top offices.
If you're to improve services in a country, you don't need a bloated cabinet. What we need to see is political will. We have the laws in place, we have the institutions in place. Are the laws working? Are the institutions working? Even if you put men or women, it doesn't matter as long as you have people of integrity.
Uganda's new cabinet has got 80 ministers. The president believes having more political envoys in the community like Agnes Nandutu could help improve service delivery and also promote economic growth.
Ugandan president there appointing many women to help fight corruption and improve the service delivery in the country. Now with that, we have come to the end of the news text, but for more of these and others, join us in our subsequent news bulletin. Many thanks indeed for the pleasure of your company. Once again, I am Julden Yaisware. Bye-bye.
Following the announcement by the Independent Electoral Commission, the IEC, of the dates for the general voter registration scheduled from the 29th of May to 11th July 2021, the National Council for Civic Education